Hi everyone! Today I'm going to read chapter 14 from the book Momo by Michael Ende. And chapter 14 is called 3 Lunches, No Answers. Towards noon on the following day, Momo tucked the tortoise under her arm and set off for Nino's inn. "You'll see, Cassiopeia," she said. "The mystery will soon be solved. Nino will tell us where Guido and Beppo are. Then we'll go and get the children, and we'll all be together again. Perhaps Nino and his wife will come along too. You'll like my friends, I'm sure. We can even give a little party this evening. I'll tell everyone about the flowers and the music and Professor Aurora and everything. Oh, I just can't wait to see them all again. First, though, I'm looking forward to a good lunch. I'm absolutely famished." And so she chattered on merrily, feeling in her jacket pocket now and then to reassure herself that Guido's letter was still there. The tortoise fixed her with its wise old eyes and made no comment. Momo began to hum as she went, and then to sing. The words and melodies were those of the voices that still seemed to ring in her ears as clearly as they had the day before. She would never forget them, she knew that now. Then, abruptly, she broke off. They had reached Nino's inn, but her first thought was that she must have gone astray. Where once had stood a little old tavern with damp-stained walls and a vine growing around the door, the street was flanked by a long concrete box with big plate glass windows. The street itself had been asphalted and was humming with traffic. A big petrol station had sprung up opposite, and alongside it, an enormous office building. There were lots of cars parked outside the new establishment, and the neon sign above the entrance said, "Nino's Fast Food." Momo went inside. She found it hard to get her bearings at first. Cemented into the floor beside the windows were a number of tables, with such spindly single legs and tiny tops that they looked like toadstools. They were just the right height for grown-ups to eat at standing up, which was fortunate since there were no chairs. Running along the other side of the room was a sort of fence made of shiny, chromium-plated tubing. Just beyond it stood a long row of glass cases containing ham and cheese sandwiches, sausages, plates of salad, pudding, cakes, and countless other things to eat, many of which Momo had never seen before. She could only take in the scene by degrees because the room was jam-packed with people, and she always seemed to be getting in their way. No matter where she stood, they elbowed her aside or jostled her along. Most of them were balancing trays laden with food and drink, and all were intent on grabbing a place at one of the little tables. Behind every man or woman that stood there eating in frantic haste, several others waited impatiently for him or her to finish. From time to time, acrimonious remarks were exchanged by those eating and those still waiting to eat. All of them looked glum and discontented. Most people were shuffling slowly along behind the barrier, taking plates or bottles and cardboard cups from the glass cases as they passed. Momo was astonished. So they could help themselves to whatever they liked. There was no one around to stop them or ask them to pay for what they took. Perhaps everything was free, Momo reflected. That would certainly account for the crush. At last she spotted Nino. Almost obscured by customers, he was seated in front of a cash register at the very end of the long row of glass cases, pressing buttons, taking money, and giving change without a stop. So he was the person who took the money. The rail fenced people in so they couldn't get to the tables without passing him. "Nino," she called, trying to squeeze through the crowd. She called again and waved Guido's letter, but Nino didn't hear. The electronic cash register was bleeping too loudly. Plucking up her courage, Momo climbed over the rail and wormed her way along the line to where Nino sat. He glanced up because one or two customers had started to protest. At the sight of Momo, his glum expression disappeared in a flash. "So you're back," he exclaimed, beaming just as he used to in the old days. "This is a nice surprise." "Get a move on," called an angry voice. "Tell that kid to stand in line like the rest of us. Cheeky young whippersnapper, barging her way to the front like that." Nino made appeasing gestures. "I won't be a moment," he said. "Be patient, can't you?" "Anyone could jump the line at this rate," another voice chimed in. "Hurry up, we don't have as much time to spare as she does." Look, Momo, Nino whispered hurriedly. Take whatever you like. Guido will pay for it all. But you'll have to line up like the rest. You heard what they said. Before Momo could reply, she was pushed past the cash desk by the people behind her. There was nothing for it but to do as the others did. Joining the end of the line, she took a tray from a shelf and a knife, fork, and spoon from a box. Because she needed both hands for the tray, she dumped Cassiopeia on top. Rather flustered by now, Momo took things at random from the glass cases as she was slowly propelled along, step by step, and arranged them around the tortoise. She ended up with an oddly assorted meal. A piece of fried fish, a jam puff, a sausage, a meat pie, and a plastic mug of lemonade. Surrounded by food on all sides, Cassiopeia retired into her shell without comment. When Momo at last reached the cash desk, she hurriedly asked Nino if he knew where Guido was. Nino nodded. Our Guido's a celebrity these days. We're all very proud of him. He's one of us, after all. He's on TV and radio every week, and they're always writing about him in the papers. I even had 2 reporters here myself last week, asking about the old days. I told them how Guido used to... Move along in front, called an irate voice. But why doesn't he come around anymore? Momo asked. Well, Nino muttered, fidgeting because his customers were making him nervous. He doesn't have the time, you see. He's got more important things on his mind now. Besides, there's nothing doing at the amphitheater, not now. What's the matter with you? Called another indignant voice. You think we like hanging around here or something? Momo dug her heels in. Where's Guido living now? She asked. Somewhere on Green Hill, Nino replied. He's got a fine house there, or so they say, with a great big garden. But please, Momo, do me a favor and come back later. Momo didn't really want to move on. She had a lot more questions for him, but someone shoved her in the back again. She took her tray to one of the toadstool tables and actually managed to get a place, though the table was so high that her nose was on level with it. When she slid the tray on top, the neighboring grown-ups eyed Cassiopeia with disgust. Ugh, see the kind of thing we have to put up with nowadays, someone said to the person beside him, and the other man growled. What do you expect? These kids. They left it at that and ignored Momo from then on. Eating was quite a problem because she could scarcely see what was on her tray, but being very hungry, she devoured every last morsel. Then, in her anxiety to discover what had become of Beppo, she rejoined the line. Although she wasn't hungry anymore, she was so afraid people might get angry with her if she simply stood there that she filled her tray with another assortment of things from the glass case. Where's Beppo? She asked when she finally made it back to the cash desk. He waited for you for ages, Nino said hurriedly, fearful of upsetting his customers again. He thought something terrible had happened to you. Kept on talking about men in gray or something of the kind. Well, you know old Beppo, he was always a bit eccentric. You there, called a voice from the back of the line. When are we going to get some service? Right away, sir, Nino called back. What happened then? Asked Momo. Then he started pestering the police, Nino went on, nervously massaging his brow. He asked them to look for you. Made a proper nuisance of himself, apparently. Next thing we knew, they'd put him in a sort of mental hospital. That's all I can tell you. Hell and damnation, someone else bellowed. Is this a fast food joint or a dentist's waiting room? What are you doing, holding a family reunion? Yes, kind of, Nino said apologetically. Is he still there? Asked Momo. Nino shook his head. I don't think so. I'm told they pronounced him harmless and let him go. So where is he now? I've no idea, Momo. Honestly, I haven't. Now please be a good girl and move on. Again, Momo was jostled past the cash desk by the people behind her, and again she waited for a place at one of the toadstool tables. She polished off her second trayful of food with a good deal less gusto than the first, but food was food, and she wouldn't have dreamed of leaving any. She still had to find out what had become of the children who used to keep her company. There was nothing for it but to stand in line once more, shuffle past the glass cases and load her tray with food rather than invite hostile remarks. It seemed an eternity before she reached the cash desk again. What about the children? She demanded. What's become of them? Oh, that's all changed, said Nino, breaking out in a sweat at her reappearance. I can't explain right now. You can see how rushed I am. But why don't they come anymore? She insisted. Nowadays, kids with no one to look after them are put in child depots. They aren't allowed to be left to themselves anymore because, well, the long and short of it is, they're taken care of. Hurry it up, you slow coaches, came an indignant chorus. We'd like to eat sometime. Momo was looking incredulous. Child depots? She repeated. Is that what my friends really wanted? They weren't consulted, said Nino, fiddling with the keys of his cash register. It's not up to kids to decide these things for themselves. Child depots keep them off the streets. That's the main thing, isn't it? Momo said nothing, just looked at him, and Nino squirmed under her searching gaze. Damn it all, shouted yet another angry voice in the background. This is the limit. If you must hold a prayer meeting, hold it somewhere else. What am I going to do now? Momo asked in a small voice. Without my friends. Nino shrugged and kneaded his hands together. Be reasonable, Momo, he said, drawing a deep breath. Come back some other time. I really can't discuss your problems now. You're welcome to eat here any time you like, you know that. But if I were you, I'd report to one of those child depots. They'd look after you and keep you occupied. They'd even give you a proper education. Besides, you'll end up in one anyway if you go on wandering around on your own like this. Momo said nothing, just gazed at him as before. When the crowd swept her along, she mechanically went to one of the tables and just as mechanically forced herself to eat a third lunch, though it was all she could do to get it down. It tasted so much like cardboard and wood shavings, she felt sick. Then, tucking Cassiopeia under her arm, she walked silently to the door without a backward glance. Hey, Momo, called Nino, who had spotted her at the last moment. Wait a bit. You never told me where you've been all this time. But the next customer was already drumming his fingers on the cash register. Nino rang up the total, took the man's money, and gave him some change. The smile had long since left his face. I've had masses to eat, Momo told Cassiopeia when they were back at the amphitheater. Far too much, to tell the truth, but somehow I still feel empty inside. After a while, she added, Anyway, I couldn't have told Nino about the flowers and the music. There wasn't time, and I don't think he'd have understood. There was another pause before she went on. Never mind. Tomorrow we'll go and look for Guido. You're sure to like him, Cassiopeia, believe me. But all that lit up on Cassiopeia's shell was a great big question mark. That's the end of chapter 14. Thank you.